Okay, I think we're good.
I think so.
So right off the bat, I have to tell you what a huge fan I am of yours and of this movie. I mean, eh, eh, yes, I'm a little old to geek out about a Disney teen movie, but it was your adaptation of Cyrano de Bergerac that caught my eye. Um, I just asked my kids at the beginning of the year in a survey, what's your favorite movie? Just one of many questions. And at one point, a couple of years ago, Let It Shine came up. And I try to see everything that they tell me. Everybody gets one movie. I've seen most of them already. And I'm watching this and it seemed awfully familiar.
Yeah.
And I couldn't put my finger on how and why, but then there it was. I've been showing this to my kids, my students, the good kids of Garfield Heights Middle School and Garfield Heights High School ever since, and using Let It Shine to teach them about Cyrano.
Yeah. Yeah.
That wasn't really a question.
Right.
That was just my introduction. So I'm here with Eric Daniels, screenwriter of Let It Shine. And Eric, again, thank you for being here today.
Happy to be here.
So how did this project come about? Were you in on it from the start, or did they bring you in?
No, it was actually my original screenplay. I've been out here writing for several years, and I'm always looking for good story ideas and what I think is commercial. And I had sold a few projects before, and I also wanted to do something kind of in the hip hop space. And I was just thinking about would really connect. It was funny because at the time, I remember I was having coffee with some friends, and somebody mentioned there was another hip hop project that was going, and they were trying to fit this movie with that, and like it's the hip hop, Raiders of the Lost Ark or whatever, and it didn't seem to make sense to me because I was like, hip hop is really about poetry, and when I thought about it, I was like, that's really Cyrano was a poet, and it just started to click. Like the more I thought about it, the whole idea of someone expressing themselves through their rap, through their poetry, and the whole love story aspect of it, and of course the mistaken identity, situation is the basis of Cyrano. So I thought that would really fit well. And then what really made it click for me was the most famous scene in Cyrano, obviously, is the balcony
The
scene.
balcony scene, right?
Yeah, which everyone has kind of seen done in different ways over the years. And I just thought if that was in a recording studio, where our guy's on one side of the glass and she's on the other, that would really be cool. And to mix that, incorporate that with music to tell the story. So that scene really kind of sparked it for me. And so yeah, I wrote it. I wrote it on my own. I wrote it as an original screenplay. Um, a spec script is what they call it. And I just felt like it was a really good fit. And I had seen, obviously, I think Steve Martin did a movie called Roxanne, which was another version of Cyrano, and there's been a couple others. So I just felt like that we hadn't done it in the younger, kind of hip hop urban space at all. So I felt like Let It Shine, that would be the perfect thing for it. So yeah, and I wrote the screenplay. It was actually originally, it wasn't called Let It Shine. It was called Under Wraps, RAPS. So, he's keeping this secret under wraps. And actually that line is in the movie still.
The line is in the movie.
Yeah.
I just watched it. Listen, I had to watch this movie again to prepare for this. And I got to watch it with my daughter, who I was seeing it through her eyes. She's in 8th grade, and I told her I'd give her credit because when the line "under wraps" came up, she gave me one of these,
Yeah. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. So that's what that's how it came about, and I started showing it around to some friends when I first wrote the draft. And one of my friends is a producer director who we worked together several times in the past. I know him back from New York, and our days coming up in production. and he had a meeting at Disney Channel coming up, and we were discussing, Under Wraps, Let It Shine, and he said, "Do you mind if I bring that up if they're looking for something like that?" And I said, "Yeah, go ahead." So that's my friend David Nelson. He took a meeting there. He kind of got a feel for the meeting, what they were looking for, and they brought up they were looking for something in the hip hop space, and he mentioned my project. So it was one of those things that, it helps, to have friends and collaborate with people. And when I wrote it, it was kind of originally a little skewed, a little bit older than Disney Channel. And then when we took the meeting, they said they were interested. And I said, okay, let me do a pass to make it a little bit younger. And we submitted it, and it just kind of took off from there. And David Nelson is actually a producer on the film as well. You'll see his name in the credits because he, brought the project into them.
So that brings up a whole bunch of credits. So
Sure.
or questions. Let me start with this one. You're credited with the story, right? And then the screenplay credit was with
Don
Scott.
D. Scott. Yeah. Well, no, we're co-writers of the screenplay. So I wrote the original screenplay.
Right.
Yeah. So Disney, then they decided to acquire it. You do that whole thing where they negotiate the deal, and then once you sign off, they usually, typically, if you sell a project, the studio kind of, you're guaranteed to come in and do at least one, maybe two rewrites for the studio. And then, after that, they can decide how they want to proceed from there. So they gave me a lot of notes. We took some meetings. And, I hadn't written for Disney Channel before. So, they definitely had some specific notes about how to kind of fit their audience a little bit more directly. So I made the changes, and some, I had some storylines in there that we had to kind of, move around a little bit, some stuff with the parents and that kind of thing. And yeah, so I did the rewrite, and they were happy with it, but I think they felt there still needed to be another pass on it with someone they've worked with before. And Don D. Scott had written some stuff for Disney Channel, and I was just a little concerned that it was going to lose the flavor of what it was. But I happened to know Don previously. We both went through the Disney. This is going back, but we both went through the Disney Writers Fellowship program at different times. So I was aware of Don, and I thought he was actually a pretty good choice, and he would still keep the flavor and the spirit of, keeping this young and kind of urban and hip hop. So yeah, I was happy with that. And then when I saw the changes, a project always evolves as you're developing it. So
Right.
sometimes the notes, change as they go, and I could tell once they got Don on, I think they figured out what direction they really wanted to go with it, and it really clicked. But so he contributed.
Was that the
We
collaborative
didn't really work.
process? Notes?
Not really at that point, because I had done my work. So they brought Don, and he did a rewrite of my screenplay. And then when I read it, I saw what he did, and any kind of thoughts or notes I could share. But at the end of the day, what happens is they decide how much they feel like, the second writer contributed, and do they think that he should get a co-writing credit.
Interesting.
So as the original writer, I have the decision of, do I want to pursue saying, no, I only want myself as screenwriter?
Right.
And you go, it's the whole thing. You go through arbitration with the Writers
Right.
Guild. But I felt like Don's contributions helped. And they said, we want to give you story credit and co-writing credit. If it was just me alone, it would have just been writing credit, for writing the script. So I was fine with that. And for me, I had sold a couple of projects before that didn't get made. So at that point, you just want to see something get made. So you don't want to slow that process down.
Right.
So that was kind of like, okay, I wasn't unhappy with the work that Don did, and I felt that he was, worthy of getting credit on that. So I didn't object to that at all.
So you mentioned that the stuff with the parents had to do with the rewrites. Tell me about that. Did you conceive of the preacher father and they took it in a different direction, or did they bring in the whole concept?
You broke up a little bit there, but I think I heard what you're saying. Yeah, the preacher father was always there, and when I say like changes, like I believe in my version, it actually opened up in the church, and then we went to the club that night. So it was little things that Don switched around. I think the order and how we tell the story, but he was always the choir director's preacher's son, and the storyline stuff that kind of we had to get rid of was there was a little bit of a backstory with the preacher and the guy he worked for at the club.
Levi.
That yeah, Levi and his father. I had written a whole thing in there where they had a history where they were in a doo-wop group together years ago, like just on the street corner singing, and they wanted to pursue music and it just didn't. Yeah, it was nice. It didn't work out, and especially with the music industry, and so the father preacher was really turned off of that world, and that was another reason why he didn't want his son to kind of go that way. And
So
then there was an issue with.
It wasn't just. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say that created tension with him and his wife. So the scene that later in the movie that kind of resolved that was him and Levi kind of made up, and then he had to make up with his wife. So they went and kind of serenaded her from below her window, a little bit more Cyrano kind of style thing. So
nice.
It was just a sweet story that was like a C-level story with the parents. But I think Disney knew that, their audience is mostly the younger tween audience, and they said, let's get away from that.
Look, so. It's a very tight script.
Yeah.
And it feels like it was filmed and edited as such.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like jumping all over my game plan here, but were you pleased with what they did with your screenplay?
I was ecstatic. I loved it. I was really happy. Paul Hohen directed the film. He had done a lot of other Disney movies for them, so he's like, he knows what they're looking for and how to deliver. And he came in and he killed it. I couldn't have envisioned a better version of it. And when I saw the numbers, they sent me. I didn't go to Atlanta when they were shooting. I stayed in Los Angeles, and I never went to the set. I was working on some other things, and just wasn't something at the time that I was able to do. But they were sending me a rough cut, and when I first saw it, I just couldn't believe how nice it looked and the level of production that he brought it up to, and seeing the numbers come together. I think when I saw CoCo Jones's number, that's what I said. I was like, okay, we've got a movie. This is real. Like, this is just fun. And, the numbers really jumped off the screen to me. So, yeah, I loved it. I couldn't have been happier with what Paul did.
It is fun, and it is so moving. I will never forget now, when I'm watching this, I'll never think of anything but that backstory between the dad and Levi when they were younger. That is the coolest thing in the world. Even when he goes in to apologize, I swear there's a moment of knowing, look, like you.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a hint of that, and you can get his anger toward that club. There's a sense of that, So that's definitely where that came from. And this is a jumping off the page a little bit, but interestingly, they actually did hire me to develop Let It Shine too. And one of my plans was to bring that back in if I could. So it didn't move forward, but we developed it, and then it kind of hit a bump in the road.
I'm kind of surprised it didn't. Disney TV movies are made all the time. And the only reason I know that is because when I look in people's IMDb credits, I see all these movies that I've never heard of. But what I can tell you is that the kids, and like 3 years later, these movies are forgotten.
Right.
And now it's been almost, 10 years? And
yeah, well, almost 9, I think, yeah.
My students, young students, middle school and even high school students, they still know it. They still love it. This is how I get to teach them, romantic literature.
A classic story.
It is a classic story. Now, before I forget, so this is where I get to geek out a little bit on the adaptation. There's the duel scene 10 ways you could have insulted me better. He
Right.
says 5, but in the end, he ends up doing 10.
Right.
There's the studio scene, which the aforementioned balcony scene, maybe the most famous scene in the play. It's the
Yeah.
one that Family Guy will parody, right? And then there's the reveal scene where our hero reveals the truth about
Right.
who he is and the relationship. Now that happens at the end.
Yeah.
Am I missing anything? Because like Act 2 of Cyrano is the bakery, and then Act 4 is like the battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
Am I missing anything, or did you have to stick to those 3 major arcs? And
Yeah.
was
No,
it just
I think you definitely picked up on a lot of them, and there was probably more in my original version because I really was trying to kind of parallel the Cyrano world as much as possible. Um, so I definitely did that. I mean, originally, Truth, the character's name was CD, and then Chris's name was Playa, like Play A, and so like as a group they were like CD Playa, but I was like the CD was Cyrano De Bergerac, right? So that was one of the things when Don brought in, he brought the idea of the name of the character being Truth. I thought that was a really great suggestion, and it worked because the whole thing is about finding your truth, right?
it's a nice hook. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, there was little things like that. I had scenes where, dueling is a great example of, instead of dueling with swords, they're dueling with words. And
Beautiful.
I even had a scene where Levi was doing a crossword puzzle or something. They were playing Scrabble or something, and he took the letter in sword and took it to the end of words, and was talking about that dueling on stage and trying to tell Cyrus he needed to step up, and that evolved into the scene that you see now where he's telling Cyrus what to do, and how he needs to kind of speak up. So yeah, I was being a little bit more literal with Cyrano, and I think Disney said, okay, let's find a way to keep what we really need of that and keep it fun. The scene that you referred to, the duel scene, is really interesting because that is a big part of Cyrano, and I like in Roxanne, Steve Martin does that as well. Even when I wrote that scene, I was a little concerned about, because as it is now, it's in the extended version of Let It Shine.
But it did not air on Disney originally.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So, and I was kind of glad that they made that change, because even when I wrote it, I was a little bit concerned, because the thing is, at the end of the movie, you want to feel, and you want the audience and the people in the audience of the movie to feel like Cyrus is the underdog, that he really can't, he's going to have a hard time beating Bling. And when we see that scene in the context of the whole movie, we've already kind of seen him best Bling a little bit once. And even though it wasn't in front of everybody, it's kind of off to the side. I felt like that scene could maybe, dilute the end of the movie if we felt like it was going to be too easy for him to beat Bling. So when the movie came out, and that was one of my notes, was I think it's a great scene. It's a great standalone number, but I don't know if it needs to be there for us to feel like Cyrus is going to have a tough battle at the end of the movie.
Oh, wow. Well, let me tell you something. Again, it was one of the scenes that caught my eye. Like, this feels familiar to me.
Right.
So, and since it was only now one of the 3 major arcs, well, I'm glad it was put in. Are you saying that you were responsible for the initial duel between Bling?
Yeah,
you kept that out of the original version.
Oh yeah, I wrote that myself, that scene, not exactly the way it's worded. What typically happened was, and I literally wrote a lot of the rap battles that they had, and every set piece that we set up for the movie, and then they would take it and take the spirit of what I wrote, which I felt like, I don't write rap, but I felt like they were pretty good for what they were. And they, Disney wants to have their own music soundtrack, so they kind of took the spirit of them, and they brought their professional, writers, and I think David Banner did the music and oversaw the music supervision of the film, and they did a wonderful job with it. So, so that they could have their soundtrack. But yeah, when I was putting it together, I really wanted them to see it. So yeah, the duel scene, I did have him, kind of, putting himself down through rap in 10 moments, and that was there. And then it became the scene that they shot that was later, taken out of the final version, but they added for the extended version.
Well, I love it.
So
First of all, look, in the original Cyrano, we know that Cyrano is an effortless duelist, and that if he doesn't kill a guy, it's because he chose not to. And then in the second scene, in Act 2, he takes on 100 men for his buddy, Ragnaro, or whoever that baker is. And so knowing that he's capable of taking on Bling, but is either afraid or lacks the self-confidence, even Levi calls him on it, that I kind of like it when Bling gets in his face in the park, right? And he goes, I forgot what he says, but he says, he just gets right in his face for a second. And there's that moment where Cyrus is looking at him like, we could do this right now, or no, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think Cyrus's battle obviously is really internal with himself, right? So, it's him overcoming his own insecurities and fears. But I think that I love the scenes, and I love, how they came together. I think that we were going for that kind of, the Karate Kid, if you see, Daniel's character, Karate Kid, beat up the other guy early in the movie, it's not going to have the same impact if he does it later too. So that was the whole thing. Like, I think we really wanted to feel like Bling, and I love Brandon Mychal, the actor who played Bling. His performance was so great. Every time he comes on screen, you just
Smith.
Yeah.
Brandon Mychal Smith. I looked at it.
Yeah, he was great. So every time, he came on there, you just wanted to feel the sense, you wanted to feel Cyrus's intimidation. And I felt like, it really came through. So at the end, it's still like, it's a really solid battle at the end. And I've had a lot of people say, I think Bling kind of won that, so
he did win it.
When I look at it, I have a hard time arguing that he didn't. But
Thank you for clarifying that. I tell my kids afterward, I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but I go, not for nothing, I really think Bling won that. He was clever. He had great performance style.
He really tells the story.
Right. Cyrus gets the knockout punch because it was
Cyrus has the knockout punch in the second verse for sure.
Right. But well, good. You've answered a very important question.
We wanted to feel like it was going to be a worthy battle, and I think it really was.
We can talk about the actors in a bit, but since you bring it up, I think this Brandon Mychal Smith did do. I'm an acting teacher. I direct our plays.
Okay.
I thought he did a brilliant job. As a thankless job too. As this villain. And he played it well, and he did a fantastic job. Were you involved at all with the casting?
They took my notes and suggestions, and I threw some names out there, and again, it was Disney Channel, so I went through a lot of their shows at the time, and there was a couple of kids that stood out that we kind of were looking at. I remember early on, Zendaya's name was thrown out there a little bit, and There was another actor that was on a show with her named Rashawn Fegan, but it was just a matter of who's out there, and none of the people that I was aware of ended up being the actors they cast. But it was one of those things where it was just the perfect timing. CoCo Jones had just come off of winning their kind of talent contest called The Next Big Thing. She was, I think, 14 and just won, this singing competition. And they're like, Disney's very good at, okay, we see how talented this actor is and singer, and let's find a vehicle for her.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
think that was kind of in their heads at the time. Let's find something where we could, showcase this girl's talent. And my project came in at the right time. And I think they already knew early on that CoCo was the girl. So the hard part was Cyrus and Chris. And they were looking around for Cyrus, and I was aware of Tyler James Williams from Everybody Hates Chris, but I didn't think he was really what Disney Channel in their kind of circle of actors that they usually work with. But when they brought him in, I was like, yeah, he'd be perfect. I mean, he's great. And I actually knew a little bit about Trevor Jackson as Chris because he was in a show that a friend of mine had worked on prior to that. I didn't know him that well, but when I saw him, I was like, just the look of the two of them together. They did send me screen tests, so I was able to see some of their auditions. And Tyler and Trevor just gelled right away. Right away, they were just like, you could see that these guys were definitely friends. They could almost, have a relationship like brothers. So, and once they had those three, they knew they were ready to go. I mean, we were already casting and moving, but that really, cemented it.
They played their parts beautifully, and Chris too. We were talking about Bling, but Chris also, he could have overplayed it. He could have been oafish.
Yeah.
And he wasn't. He was, he just kept it likable enough. I think if there were 10 more minutes, we'd have lost like my daughter. Like she was starting to turn off, some of his selfish behaviors, but he managed to keep it, you managed to keep him likable without overplaying his stupidity, and yet Cyrus too, despite his intelligence, you could see them being able to relate to each other.
Yeah.
And I saw that in your writing of all three of the main characters with CoCo. You wrote each of them at their own level and using almost different grammar.
Yeah.
Each of them.
Yeah. That's a credit to the actors as well. I mean, I think you write it one way and you hope that you find the right people to play these roles, and then I think when they come in and they bring their identities to it and make it theirs, and that's when it really sings. And Tyler just has a natural vulnerability about him that you can't even really write. I mean, there's moments in that when he realizes what he just did and went along with in the recording studio scene and went along with that, and he sees that she's falling for Chris right in front of his face. The look on his face is just somebody who's just like, heartbroken, a good friend, but it's just, that's something you can't write. That's something that Tyler just has. And the same with Trevor. I mean, Trevor's a really talented guy who can really sing, good looking guy. And the thing that you hit on the head was his likability. A lot of actors who are handsome and have talent, they come across a little bit more arrogant or whatever. Trevor's just a natural, and you don't see a lot of guys like that who can also be funny and can make fun of themselves a little bit. So
it was a good choice early on to have him almost concede the contest. He's like disappointed, but he's like, all right, let's go set this straight. And then they all have moments
of lights and exactly. Yeah, that was always intended. Yeah. And I just think, when you get those kind of actors together, you really try to highlight what they do well. and they all just they brought it, which was excellent. I think for CoCo it's probably the most intimidating because for her it was the first thing she'd ever done, really. So she I think it helped her to have a little bit more experienced actors around her like Tyler and Trevor to kind of help her through that experience of like your first time. So
she did a phenomenal job.
oh yeah,
As did her manager, who I'm a fan of, but her name eludes me at the moment.
Nicole Sullivan, I think. Yeah, yeah,
Just terrific in everything she's in.
yeah,
Just odd that you weren't on the set, which was another
yeah,
set of questions for me. I mean, Tyler handles some lines of yours so masterfully that I tell my kids, I pause the movie after the studio scene. And when she says, oh, Cyrus, I didn't see you there. And he says, story of my life.
yeah,
I tell the kids, hey, kids, not only is that the best line in the movie, that might be the best line in any movie. I mean, it so works perfectly. I'll tell you, and again, my daughter said, no, I'm wrong, because he's got better lines when he's with CoCo in the studio, where he
yeah,
says, I'm also his gulp biggest fan.
yeah,
He
yeah, yeah,
does it so sheepishly. He's got lines
yeah.
of yours that he executes like I don't. Let me ask you this:
Hmm.
Did you were you Cyrus when you were writing this? Like, is there a Cyrus in you?
I think you have to be. For me, I know as a writer, I always try to tell stories. I mean, that wasn't my story, but I always look for ways. Even when I was younger, before I knew I was going to be a writer, when I would watch a movie, I would always try to project myself into that world a little bit more. So it became more important to me as I started developing as a writer out here to tell stories that showcase, especially people of color, in diverse storytelling. And I always saw it from the perspective of someone kind of a younger version of me and what that experience would be like. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that was, you try to draw on things as much as possible, but I've written a lot of things that feature, young black male protagonists and storylines and how, the world is through their eyes and through a family. And um, speaking of families too, and actors, the relationship with him and his father,
Oh,
it was very important to me in this story. And the whole idea of a father not knowing the son that well, and
oh yeah,
that whole thing was very important to tell that story. And what Courtney B. Vance did
oh yeah.
just elevated. I mean, when I saw his scenes as the preacher, that was exactly how I wrote it and what I pictured, and he just nailed it. So,
His performance gives me chills, and the relationship with him and his son is it's August Wilson. I mean,
yeah,
there's
absolutely,
lines that remind me of, first of all, not for nothing, Courtney B. Vance is an August Wilson actor.
yeah,
He was the first Corey in Fences on Broadway, and he
right.
was
You're absolutely right.
Lyman in
Yeah,
the TV movie of the piano lesson. And there's a line in Fences where the wife says to Troy, she says, he's just trying to be like you with the sports.
yeah,
And there's a line
yeah,
where he says he just wants to share a part of himself with you.
yeah,
I had that same feeling.
yeah.
What a
Well,
beautiful relationship. What perfect
yeah,
casting. He hadn't even done Johnny Cochran yet. So he was really a
yeah, you're right.
Broadway.
He went on to win an Emmy, I think, for the next thing he did right after this. And I
Oh
mean,
my God.
Courtney B. Vance has always been an amazing actor. And
Amazing.
again, that's one of those things where when you hear about who they cast, you're like, okay, we're in the big leagues with this cast. I mean, it's really impressive how they how it came together. and he definitely took it to another level. And
Um,
I mean, your research is on point. I mean, Fences, August Wilson, a lot of my stuff does have that kind of father and son rediscovering each other, and that was what this movie lent itself to as well. So
that's probably an advantage I have for teaching high school and middle school. Middle
yeah,
school, I can teach them a little of the Cyrano. Um, at the high school level, though, August Wilson.
yeah,
So Courtney B. Vance, of course, bridges that gap beautifully.
yeah,
What a
yeah,
performer.
yeah.
Um, are there any other characters other than Levi? And I take it he's LeBray, right? I'm not wrong about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. Um, the first person that Cyrano confides his love of Roxanne to. Um, are there any other characters from Cyrano that I'm missing? Obviously, Lord of the Bling
Yeah,
combines both Count de Guiche, but
yeah,
also the person that dies in a duel with Cyrano after the 10 ways you could have insulted my nose
right.
better. So
Yeah,
that was great combining
yeah.
those two for the one character. I've always wondered, is there any other characters or did we touch upon all of them?
It's hard to say directly because I think, like you said, some of them were kind of combined to tell the story, and you got to keep in mind that it is Disney Channel, and you got to keep it young and fun, and some of these stories don't always have happy endings, so you got to make sure that that's where we're headed. So I can't say directly that offhand. I can say there's another character, um, but what you mentioned with Lord of the Bling, just calling him Lord of the Bling, I thought was giving us a little bit of a reference to, you
Count.
know, yeah, exactly. So
It's beautiful.
yeah, yeah.
It's
So that's
beautiful.
kind of where we're going for. So as much as possible, I try to keep some of those elements there, and still, so you can see that it's a framework of Cyrano. Yeah.
Oh, well, it's beautiful. Let me try to squeeze in some of my students' questions
Sure.
that I haven't touched on yet. Um, what's the path for becoming a screenwriter? Or I guess I should say, what's your journey? Because I would imagine everybody's story is different.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're right. There's no one way to do that. I mean, obviously, writing as much as you can to find yourself as a writer, creative writing, learn a little bit about writing, for screen, for screenplays, TV, film. For me, I was in college at Michigan State. I had studied some creative writing. I had really gotten attracted to TV production, film production, and I was already kind of on that path in my major, and I was going to New York in the summers, where my family. I grew up in Michigan, but my family had moved to New York City, so I was coming there in the summers, and I was always looking for opportunities. And I had heard of Spike Lee, saw his first indie films, and I heard he was doing another one for a summer. So I just started sending letters and making calls and do whatever I can just to kind of annoy them enough that they would call me back. And they gave me an interview to come in for Do the Right Thing. So when I flew back for the holidays, I went in, I interviewed, and the Spike was doing this movie that was coming out, going into production in the summer. So I basically got hired as an intern, which is, no money, but you're on the set and you're working and you're learning.
Right.
So that summer, that was my first intro into like the film business. It was the summer between my junior and senior year of college, and it was basically film school is what it became because
Right.
I was an intern. I'm credited as a production assistant. They just gave me more responsibility. They gave me a little bit of money, but not much. But you're there every day on the set. That movie was very special because we shot the whole movie on one block. And any of your students who haven't seen Do the Right Thing should go see it because it is a very important, iconic film. But it's also just amazing how he kind of breaks up the block and tells one story in a one neighborhood, one block, that's one day. And we were there for I think 12 weeks, and it was just it was really a family of people, young people working on that film. helping Spike kind of, create this vision that he had. And we had a lot of responsibility. We were hands-on with the actors, and the actors that were on that movie as well. The cast at that point was relatively unknown, but you had Samuel L. Jackson,
Right.
Rosie Perez,
Right.
Martin Lawrence, John Turturro,
Right.
all these amazing actors, Danny Aiello, Ozzie Davis, Ruby Dee, an incredible cast of talent, Giancarlo Esposito. So it was like amazing to watch that come together. And one thing that Spike did that was really helpful for me as a storyteller and a filmmaker as well was not only did we see the material, the sides of the script that they were going to shoot for the day, and then we're on set when they shot it, but he also opened up the dailies of the film that we shot from the previous day. So every day after we wrapped, we could catch a van over to Long Island University and watch the footage that he shot the previous day. So literally we were seeing the movie come together scene by scene. And I had never seen anything like that before.
Right.
So it was really, you're learning hands-on, how he's putting this movie together. And that was the best education I could have ever asked for.
Because it was shot in one block, were they able to shoot it in sequential order, or
for the most part, yeah. No, it was pretty much in succession. It would jump around a little bit, but he had they literally built like the pizza parlor, they built that. And even the convenience store across the street didn't exist before. The pizza parlor was so real that almost every day someone would come up and try to buy a slice. And we had to tell them it wasn't a working pizza place.
Right.
Yeah, but we had control. Traffic still had to flow sometimes, but other than that, we had control of the block. And we did a lot of events before, so it's kind of let the neighborhood know that we were going to be there, and did some little kid Olympic games and that kind of stuff to kind of help warm them up. And it was pretty smooth until I think probably like the third month of us being there, people started to get a little bit, especially night shoots when you're making a lot of noise and rolling through the night, and people are getting a little annoyed that this is still going on.
It's magic at first, right? They got stars in their eyes. Yeah, and then
they got a little tired of us at the end.
Right. Yeah. I did a couple films, and same thing, On Location in Ohio, 20th Century Fox, and Keith Barish. And now that you mention it, at first it's like everybody just whatever we can give you, whatever you want. And then after after a while, it's like, when is this going to be over?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it was, that's what it was. But it was just an incredible experience. And it just happened it wrapped just as I was, getting ready to go back to school. So I knew right then, I was like, this is the world I want to be in. So let me go back and, finish my last year and get back to work in production. And fortunately, there was work for me when I came out again as a production assistant. And I started to move up as, doing assistant directing and that kind of thing. But the other thing that was great about working with Spike was this family of production people. And we were all kind of in college or coming out of college, and we all knew each other, and we were all doing videos or short films. And I did a short film myself after Mo Better Blues, Spike's next movie. And I, had a bunch of friends who worked on crew, who did sound and camera and, assistant directing and that kind of thing. And we all did that for each other's projects for free. But we kind of had this little, community of young up and coming filmmakers. And a lot of those people, who were interns on Spike's movies now are very successful directors, producers, writers, not just the actors, but a lot of them who were behind the scenes coming up have really blossomed and are doing big things now. So that kind of got me into the mindset of, just seeing how Spike did that. I was like, okay, that's how you do a film. Let me do a short film. And that's what I did. I wrote one, and it did pretty well. And getting back to the path of becoming a screenwriter, my short film went into festivals and won some awards. And
was that Details?
That was actually a short film called Occupational Hazard. That was my first film. Okay.
I found Details online. I was able to watch that.
Oh, you really? Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it. just disturbing enough that I couldn't show my kids.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. That was actually my wife. I mentioned she's an actress. She's in that film. She's the friend of the lead.
Oh, see, now I
Yeah.
have to watch it again.
Yeah.
She
That's
was
crazy.
excellent. She was
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah.
Um,
She's,
yeah,
and so what happened with that was her friend, with details, her friend had written something, and she said you should show Eric. And I kind of helped her shape that story. And I was looking for something else to direct, and she had um her boyfriend help put the money together. And I was like, let's shoot a short film. And we did, and that did very well. That won some awards, and HBO picked it up at a certain point. So that was great. But yeah, with my first short, that kind of got me going. The short film won some awards, and then a producer saw it, and he just said, I'm looking at here's what happened for me was a producer saw my short film, and he said, I'm looking to do something for a hip hop artist, and this will tell you how old I am, but it was Crisscross, the two kids who wore the clothes backwards and had a huge hit. So
sure.
I said, this producer's kind of throwing a bone to me to say, hey, if you have something, let me see it. So I quickly just started writing a screenplay, and that became my first screenplay that I wrote. And it was rough, but it kind of was, I knew what I was doing. I was learning how to tell a story like that. And he read it and gave me really good notes. And he said, what you should do? You should probably submit this to some programs. And Disney was one of the places that had a writer's fellowship training program. And I
Yeah,
submitted it to Disney. Didn't really think much more about it. Um, and then a few months later, they wanted to interview me. So they flew me out to Los Angeles. And, I had always thought I was going to kind of come up through the independent film world, working with Spike, working in New York, and, continuing on the production side of things, and then hopefully writing and directing my own stuff there. But when I got to LA, it just clicked. My interview went well. And that was the first time I really thought, I could be coming to California. And, that's what happened. It was a 1-year job writing for Disney as the Writers Fellowship program, and they paid you, which was pretty great to be able to come out here to write for a year.
right.
And they introduced you to these really, great executives, and a lot of talented writers came and spoke to us, which was amazing. And they put you through into some courses, and that really kind of helped me really understand the studio process side of things in terms of writing for them and selling screenplays. So, and fortunately, I had come to them already with a well-researched idea for a pitch for a movie. And that, I think, even in my interview, helped me kind of get the gig. And that became what I wrote at Disney in the 1-year fellowship program. And that movie ended up being a really big deal for me, because I wrote it. It actually got a little bit of buzz at Disney, but that program wasn't set up to make those films. So at the end of the year, you have the right to kind of get your work back and maybe, sell it somewhere else. But I think you only have a 1-year window to do that. And I started using my production contacts and working the script around. And I was able to get it to a few places, for talent, for actors and directors. And the first call that I eventually got after getting it out to people's hands was that John Singleton wants to direct your movie, and Will Smith wants to star, and this is for Sony. So they're going to buy it at Sony Studios. And that's like that
Wow,
dream phone call. So my first real screenplay sale was a really, really big deal. It was a big sale. And
that's huge.
yeah,
Now, is that something in development right now?
it's, that movie has been, I hope so. I hope so. That movie has been around for 20 years, and it's a great story. It's called Brushback. It's about a cocky professional baseball player who doesn't respect the history of the game, especially for Black players. And he's all about money and fame. And he has got a strained relationship with his father, and he gets hit by a pitch and knocked out. And when he wakes up, he's in the Negro Baseball Leagues of 1945.
Oh my God.
So yeah, so it's a contemporary guy. It's kind of Back to the Future in the world of Negro League baseball. And this guy with these selfish attitudes, and learning about what those guys went through.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and it's a
Um,
comedy. It's fun. He's doing modern day things.
and coming full circle with that August Wilson Fences too.
That's right. That's
Right.
right. Yeah, absolutely. that one especially, and that's probably one of the best things I've ever written. And we've had so many close calls with getting that made. The problem I think that happens with studios is that once you get big names involved, it's just trying to figure out that we literally, got Will on board right when he was skyrocketing. So he was doing, saving the world every year, and my movie was kind of the little movie that kind of got pushed back. And Will liked it enough that when Sony's option, option's like a rental period, right? So when their period of having the option ran out, Will took it to Fox Studios, which then they optioned it, and we developed it some more. And they've, I've been rewritten a couple different times at different places, and then they came back to me again and said, we really want to make this movie. They had a new director, Malcolm D. Lee, who directed Girls Trip, and Fox is still trying to make that happen again. At one point, we had Gary Ross, who directed Hunger Games and Pleasantville. Yeah, so we had some really big people attached to it. But then Fox recently was bought by Disney. So now it's gone full circle from the Disney training program to Sony, to Fox, and now it's back in Disney. Recently, I've had some contact with the Disney executives who are aware of Brushback and still really like it. So who knows? We'll see. I'm really encouraging it because it's a great story, and it's a world we really haven't seen much on screen.
Eric, it sounds like a great story, and it couldn't be more timely. And
yeah.
Again, your ear for dialogue and is just amazing, really.
Thank you.
I would love to see that film take shape.
Me too. That film, it means a lot to me, and like you said, it still has that father-son, August Wilson kind of vibe to it. So we'll see. I mean, I got fingers crossed, and like I said, it's going on 20 years, but people are still talking about it. So that's always a good sign. So
I'd like to see that happen.
Yeah.
I guess I got a couple more giant questions, and then I'll put you out of your misery. I can't thank you enough for your time.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. What was your favorite part of the finished product? Or I guess it's two different questions, and I have two different questions from two different students. Let me combine them. What was your favorite part of Let It Shine, the finished product? And what, Eric Daniel, are you most proud of when it comes to that project?
Well, the first part, my favorite part, I mean, really just seeing it come together. And as a writer, you always have a kind of a mental picture, I think, when you're telling a story of what you want to see and you're hoping to see. But, until you see that on screen and you see how it looks, and, having these big set piece numbers, where music is being applied and dance, and, the talent is there, and,
Impressive dancing, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm really impressed with the choreography in that movie.
Yeah. That first number, to me, that first number is really incredible.
It's
because
amazing.
It's got dance in it, it's got the music, but it's also telling story. And so in one song, you're setting up the idea that Cyrus is this, kind of, shy, talented rapper who's needs to learn to speak up. You learn that Bling is the king, and he's the head of the game, and he's going to be the guy who's got to climb the mountain he's got to climb. You see that Chris is the image of the guy that we would believe to be a successful performer. So you learn it really in one song really propels us into the story. So they really took a lot of different elements with that song and really kind of forwarded us, not just musically, but story-wise too, and we know that he's doing this without his father's blessing. So when you see that the music can help advance your story, that really was satisfying. And then when you see scenes like what I said with CoCo, and when the recording studio scene came together as beautifully as it did,
sure,
it's like you can write that, but until you see it, and the director, the way he, how do you shoot a scene where she doesn't know who the guy is in the booth visually, and he pulled that off, so that's just amazing to see that.
Yeah, it holds up perfectly.
Yeah.
Ironically, the only thing that would be changed today, because I'm watching it through those eyes
Yeah.
of brand new students, would
Right.
be he'd have wires in his ears instead of
The big headphones, right? Yeah.
where
Yeah.
CoCo could probably hear.
Yeah. That was when, we had little notes like that. I was like, I think she could maybe hear that, but I was like, it should be on his ear, but
honestly, we bought everything before now.
Yeah.
That's
So
the opening scene. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. I want to hear.
Well, the opening scene, as you say, musically handles so much exposition.
Yeah.
That it's such a it's such a clean script and a polished way of handling it. The segues between scenes are very clever, and what can I tell you? As I said, I watched the movie again today with my daughter, and I'm a grown-ass man, but I've got tears in my eyes watching the final scene where it all comes together, and a lot of that is editing, music, choreography.
It all comes together.
It comes together.
Yeah.
We forgive Chris, and it's a beautiful ending.
Well,
and
it was beyond my expectations sometimes too, because again, to credit the musical side of it and storytelling, it's like, how do you create a song at the end when we have our big reveal of who Cyrus is? And this becomes one of the best songs in the movie, where she's performing on stage and he's rapping with her, revealing himself to her. Yes. It's like, you can write that, but I just that's really an emotional moment that really works, and it pays off musically as well as in the story. So that was super satisfying to see that, the heart of the movie stayed in place along with the story and the music, and it wasn't just about rap battles and all that. We maintained that, and we really, bought into it. So that, and then the second part of what
collaborated with these musicians. You said Disney had their own people, but the initial confrontation, 10 things I could have done better. Tyler and CoCo on stage. It's so hardwired into the adaptation.
Yeah.
How were you not working closely with the songwriters?
That's Disney. The great thing about Disney Channel is that they know their audience, and they've been doing it, well for a while. I mean, you look at all the High School Musical movies and all the stuff they've done before. So they really know who they're servicing. And I think that's what they saw and Let It Shine, was not only a great story with a classic narrative of Cyrano, but also something that they could really produce this great soundtrack and have these moments where their talent can shine and connect with their audience. And I think the diversity of it was something that really stood out for them and appealed to them as well. So hopefully that came through in my script enough that inspired the music people that they brought on, and they could see, like I said, I literally wrote a lot of the rap elements myself to kind of inspire them to create the music that they did. So we would go back and forth with emails and notes, but I know Disney's a big machine, and once they get their people on, there's not much more for me to do other than, witness it. So it was in good hands, and I knew that. So hopefully, we gave them all the material they needed to find that, and it turns out that they did. And the thing that I'm proudest of, I think, is what you mentioned. That my daughter is 17, so she was at the time old enough to really kind of appreciate what we're doing. They were 9 and 8 and 9 or whatever, so they were in that kind of audience as well. So when we had the premiere and she went there, and I mean, all these young actors that she knew from all these Disney Channel shows,
Oh, wow.
Zendaya, and all these actors. Jesse was one of the shows at the time. She got pictures with all of them, but
Oh,
to
wow.
see not only then how excited her age group was to see it, but now when I meet someone in their early 20s, say, or late teens, and I kind of know that they're gonna know that movie.
Yeah.
So it it's really great to see that and hear it. And I honestly think the movie was really it was successful in terms of ratings and all the measures they have for the studio. But I actually think it was more successful than even Disney Channel realized with connecting with the audience
I feel the
on
same
social
way.
media, and they're just honestly for the diversity of it. There just hasn't been a lot that reflects African American, culture on Disney Channel or elsewhere. So
Honest
that
to God,
movie really meant a lot to a lot of people to see that, and I've
I
heard
agree.
young people tell me that as well. So that's what I'm the proudest of, that we've made an imprint on people like that, and to see themselves on screen like that. And that's kind of what all my work is always about.
I
You know,
couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more.
yeah,
I teach in an inner city of Cleveland, and I feel the same way, that it's such um, a, a, a beautiful story, um, and it's so great to see themselves reflected back to them like that. Uh,
yeah,
the I think I'm looking at my students' questions, and I
sure,
think
sure, of course.
we've done a pretty good job here. Um, I guess this one's for me. Should should Edmund Rostand receive an uncredited um, credit, writing credit in IMDb, adapted by, for example?
Right. It's funny because when I first wrote my screenplay, I actually mentioned that, in the, original material, source material, and I had Rostan's name. I think Disney felt that it was different enough, even though they still referenced Cyrano, that they didn't, I'm not sure how that works, and that they didn't need to credit that. And I think, there's been other movies that have used the Cyrano kind of plot points, but have not said this is Cyrano. There was a movie called The Truth About Cats and Dogs, which is another variation of that. When you look at it, you're like, okay, this is just Cyrano de Bergerac. But I don't know how they kind of determine if it needs that uh, direct kind of, say that this is from his original material. But I did have that on my original screenplay. Yeah.
Just because I'm always looking for ways that the kids can look. If this movie has lasted the test of time, and so far it has, then if there
Yeah.
was a way to somehow parlay that into, um, you know, getting kids to know about,
Absolutely.
100-year-old playwrights,
Yeah.
you're right?
Yeah. Well, we weren't trying to hide it. I mean, Cyrano is Cyrus, and Roxanne is Roxy, and Chris is Chris. So it's right there. I'm not sure how that works in terms of the rights and attributing that kind of credit, but absolutely, that was our inspiration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Eric, I can't thank you enough for taking this time today. I'm looking forward to sharing this interview and your work with other people. Um, I, am looking forward to Brushback. I hope
Yeah. Me
that's
too.
right. That
Yeah.
I would.
Yeah.
That is a movie I would like to see.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. I mean, it's fortunately, I think the industry has opened up a lot more to more diverse stories and telling stories that weren't always. I mean, I was very fortunate. I've been out here as a writer for, like I said, over 20 years, and I've sold a lot of stuff, and it doesn't all show up on the credit until there's an actual movie. But um, I've got a lot of stuff out there, and it feels like now people are a little bit more aware that we need to kind of, diversify how we're telling these stories. And I've been actually right now we're in the process of getting a movie made. So I've got something else that's about to go. So, I've been very positioned well to sell stuff. Sometimes as a writer, it's beyond your control, how it gets moving after that. And even something, I mean, we had Let It Shine too, where I was hired to develop that. So it feels like sometimes, okay, we're going to get this movie going, and then, things happen. But um, hopefully my work, can inspire other kids to do what they want to do, and younger people to write and tell stories, and find ways to just kind of, express themselves through the arts. So,
Okay, I think I speak for other people. I don't think it's been too long that we should Let It Shine 2 die down yet. I think they're still
yeah,
right. Didn't you originally wrote it for people in their 20s
yeah,
or maybe late teens, and
yeah,
Disney kept you in that teen bracket.
yeah,
Um, but people grow up,
yeah,
and I would let's hear their story.
yeah, absolutely.
All those actors
No,
are out
yeah,
there.
yeah, and there, there's other. I mean, I love the idea of, let's continue to tell these stories of, these people who are, still trying to find ways to shine. And it's funny because there's two girls in Let It Shine, the two choir girls who are in the opening, and they have one small scenes later. Um, they ended up being a really big deal. They're sisters, Chloe and Halle Bailey.
Chloe and Hallie
Halle Bailey.
Bailey. Yeah.
And I mean, they got, I think Beyonce's recorded with them and produced a lot of their music, and they're huge now. I mean, they were nominated for Emmys, and I mean, Grammys, and they're on Grownish. But I had developed a story for them in Let It Shine too, where they were going to be these choir girls who kind of, one of them wanted to break out and become more pop, and the other was, kind of, they were in a choir competition, and their mother was kind of telling them they need to stay there. So I was going to keep the characters from the original Let It Shine, but really was going to give them the story of this is their turn to shine. And
Wow.
ironically, they became these huge stars. So I think that
Yeah.
would have been, that's kind of something that I thought they missed out on, an opportunity to really continuing to showcase all this talent, because they had won the same next big thing contest that CoCo Jones won. They won later.
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
yeah,
Oh,
but
wow.
who knows? We'll see. I'm just really happy that the story kind of connected as it did, and like you said, people still talk about it. So
It
that's really
did.
great.
And finding your own voice, letting yourself shine like that
Yeah,
is such a great message right now. Um, you know,
absolutely.
I have my kids do monologues. Ironically enough, one of them is from Do the Right Thing, the
Oh
story
yeah,
of love and
and
hate. It's it's
yes,
it's a great monologue. And
yeah,
I've got some kids that love doing that one.
yeah,
Um, and the whole point of the monologues for me is not to train kids to become actors,
right.
but to teach them how to shine, how to um, bring forth their best voice
Yeah,
for success.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that is Let It Shine. That's what we, that's what the message we wanted to put out there, and I continue to do that even with my own kids. Just
good for you,
find your voice, and it's not always going to be what everybody else thinks it should be. So yeah, no question.
Eric Daniel. Thank you so much, sir. It's
Thank
been
you. I enjoyed
it,
it.
it's been a pleasure.
Yeah. All right.